This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Harvester by Jean Stratton-Porter. Read by Cindy Steib. Chapter 14. Snowy Wings. The Harvester sat at the table in deep thought until the lights in the girls' room were darkened and everything was quiet. Then he locked the screens inside and went into the night. The moon flooded all the hillside until coarse print could have been read with keen eyes in its light. A restlessness, born of exaltation he could not allay or control, was on him. She had not forgotten. After this the dream would be effaced by reality. It was the beginning. He scarcely had dared hope for so much. Surely it presaged the love with which she some day would come to him and crown his life. He walked slowly up and down the drive, passing her windows, unable to think of sleep. Over and over he dwelt on the incidents of the day. So inevitably he came to his promise. "Merciful Heaven," he muttered. "How can such things happen? The poor, overworked, tired, suffering girl. It will give her some comfort. She will feel better. It has to be done. I believe I will do the worst part of it while she sleeps." He went to the cabin, crept very close to one of her windows, and listened intently. Surely no mortal awake could lie motionless so long. She must be sleeping. He patted Belshazzar, whispered, "Watch, boy! Watch for your life!" and then crossed to the dry house. Beside it he found a big roll of coffee sacks that he used in collecting roots, and going to the barn he took a spade and mattock. Then he climbed the hill to the oak. In the white moonlight laid off his measurements and began work. His heart was very tender as he lifted the earth and threw it into the tops of the big bags he had propped open. "I'll line it with a couple of sheets and finish the edge with pond lilies and ferns," he planned, "and I'll drag this earth from sight and cover it with brush until I need it." Sometimes he paused in his work to rest a few minutes, and then he stood and glanced around him. Several times he went down the hill and slipped close to a window, but he could not hear a sound. When his work was finished, he stood before the oak, scraping clinging earth from the mattock with which he had cut roots he had been compelled to remove. He was tired now, and he thought he would go to his room and sleep until daybreak. As he turned the implement, he remembered how through it he had found her, and now he was using it in her service. He smiled as he worked, and half listened to the steady roll of sound encompassing him. A cool breath swept from the lake, and he wondered if it found her wet, hot cheek. A wild duck in the rushes below gave an alarm signal, and it ran in subdued voice, note by note, along the shore. The Harvester gripped the mattock and stood motionless. Wild things had taught him so many lessons he heeded their warnings instinctively. Perhaps it was a mink or muskrat approaching the rushes. Listening intently, he heard a stealthy step coming up the path behind him. The Harvester waited. He soundlessly moved around the trunk of the big tree. An instant more the night prowler stopped squarely at the head of the open grave and jumped back with an oath. He stood tense a second, then advanced, scratched a match and dropped it into the depths of the opening. That instant the Harvester recognized Henry Jameson, and with a spring landed between the man's shoulders and sent him face down, headlong into the grave. He snatched one of the sacks of earth and tipping it, gripped the bottom and emptied the contents on the head and shoulders of the prostrate man. Then he dropped on him and feeling across his back took an ugly big revolver from a pocket. He swung to the surface and waited until Henry Jameson crawled from under the weight of earth and began to rise. Then, at each attempt, he knocked him down. At last he caught the exhausted man by the collar and dragged him to the path, where he dropped him and stood gloating. "So," he said, "it's you. Coming to execute your threat, are you? What's the matter with my finishing you, loading your carcass with a few stones into this sack, and dropping you in the deepest part of the lake?" There was no reply. "Ain't you a little hasty?" asked the Harvester. "Isn't it rather cold-blooded to come sneaking when you thought I'd be asleep? Don't you think it would be low down to kill a man on his wedding day?" Henry Jameson arose cautiously and faced the Harvester. "Who have you killed?" he panted. "No one," answered the Harvester. "This is for the victim of a member of your family, but I never dreamed I'd have the joy of planting any of you in it first, even temporarily." "Did you rest well?" "What I should have done was to fill in, tread down, and leave you at the bottom." Jameson retreated a few steps. The Harvester laughed and advanced the same distance. "Now then," he said, "explain what you are doing on my premises a few hours after your threat, and armed with another revolver before I could return the one I took from you this afternoon. You must grow them on bushes at your place, they seem so numerous. Speak up! What are you doing here?" There was no answer. "There are three things it might be," mused the Harvester. "You might think to harm me, but you're watched on that score, and I don't believe you'd enjoy the result sure to follow. You might contemplate trying to steal Ruth's money again, but we'll pass that up. You might want to go through my woods to inform yourself as to what I have of value there, but in all probability you are after me. Well, here I am. Go ahead. Do what you came to." The Harvester stepped toward the lake bank, and Jameson, turning to watch him, exposed a face ghastly through its grime. "Look here!" cried the Harvester, sickening. "We will end this right now. I was rather busy this afternoon, but I wasn't too hurried to take that little weapon of yours to the chief of police and tell him where and how I got it and what occurred." He was to return it to you tomorrow with his ultimatum. When I have added the history of tonight, reinforced by another gun, he will understand your intentions and know where you belong. You should be confined, but because your name is the same as the girl's, and there is of your blood in her veins, I'll give you one more chance. I'll let you go this time, but I'll report you, and deliver this implement to be added to your collection at headquarters. And I tell you, and I'll tell them, that if ever I find you on my premises again, I'll finish you on sight. Is that clear?" Jameson nodded. "What I should do is plump you squarely into confinement, as I could easily enough, but that's not my way. I am going to let you off, but you go knowing the law. One thing more. Don't leave with any distorted ideas in your head. I saw Ruth the day she stepped from the cars in Onabasha, and I loved her. I wanted to court and marry her as any man would the girl he loves. But you spoiled that with your woman-killing brutality. So I married her in Onabasha this afternoon. You can see the records at the county clerk's office, and interview the minister who performed the ceremony if you doubt me. Ruth is in her room, comfortable as I can make her, asleep and unafraid, thank God. This grave is for her mother. The girl wants her lifted from the horrible place you put her and laid where it is sheltered and pleasant. Now, I'll see you off my land. Hurry yourself." With the Harvester following, Henry Jameson went back over the path he had come, until he reached and mounted the horse he had ridden. As the Harvester watched him, Jameson turned in the saddle and spoke for the second time. "What will you give me in cold cash to tell you who she is and where her mother's people are?" The Harvester leaped for the bridle and missed. Jameson bent over the horse and lashed it to a run. Halfway to the oak, the Harvester remembered the revolver, but being unaccustomed to weapons, he had forgotten it when he needed it most. He replaced the earth in the sack and dragged it away, then plunged into the lake, and afterward went to bed, where he slept soundly until dawn. First he slipped into the living room and wrote a note to the girl. Then he fed Belshazzar and ate a hearty breakfast. He stationed the dog at her door, gave him the note, and went to the oak. There he arranged everything neatly and as he desired, and then hitching Betsy